To start, let me deal with the title, right? I know. Rachel addressed it last week. Thank you, Rachel. But don't worry, I just want to let you know that it's not that chim one, okay? My England not powderful one, okay? So, the fiddle, anyway, is a string instrument. Now it usually refers to a violin, okay? So what's the second fiddle then? It refers to the second violin in an orchestra, right? I think we prepare some slides on that. So you can look at, if you're not familiar with me, if you're like me, not familiar with an orchestra, then you just need to know that the first violin plays the melody. And that's what most of us know a piece or music or song for, right? The main melody. Don't believe me? I'm going to hum you a piece of music, okay? Ready? Well, do it again. I'm sure you got it. There's absolutely no way to verify this, which is great. But I know you got it. It's the road ahead, right? And you were definitely, singing it out loudly last night as you celebrated. And that's the power of melody, the traction that it has. And most of the time, actually, that's all we remember of a song or a piece or anything, right? In contrast, I think most of us will be hard-pressed, find it truly difficult to identify any song, okay, we say just the bass notes. Yeah, sorry, Daniel was playing a bass note, the bass just now anyway. Or any accompaniment. But playing that supporting notes in the background is exactly the job of the second fiddle in the orchestra. And that's what second fiddle alludes to. One who plays a supporting or a subservient role. Even more about myself. Okay, I'm the second kid in my family. I have two sisters, one elder and one younger. My elder sister is academically outstanding. And I have that I call misfortune of being just 1 year apart from her. Okay, we are in the same primary school. She has good grades. She tops the top class. Okay, she's a prefect. I'm not sure if it's still a thing now, but prefect, wear tie one. Very well behaved model student, got batch one. Okay, then me. I never made it to the best class in my entire primary school career. I also far from model student. Okay, I recall clearly there was one time my teacher walked me to the general office to call my mother because I misbehaved. Okay, on the way, she looked at me and she scolded me. She said, how can it be that an excellent sister can have a brother like you? Wow, sad, right? All my life as a student, I lived in the shadow of my elder sister. I'm playing second fiddle to her great symphony of academic excellence on top of being a model student. How irritating and how sad, right? Okay, to let you in on a little secret though, all these years I have a secret comfort, and that's found in my younger sister. She's 3 years younger. And guess what? In the whole primary school life, she's always slightly lagging behind me academically. And at PSLE, last time got points. I got a precious 4 more points than her in PSLE. How reassuring, right? That was really comforting. I really thank God for younger sisters. However, I need to show you something. It all shattered, this comfort that I have, all shattered spectacularly. The date is 1st December 2017 in these photos. My sister is the one in red. Okay. My younger sister, a social worker by then, she won this prestigious Promising Social Worker Award, PSWA for short. And the award ceremony was at the Istana, and the president herself, Madam Halimah Yacob, gave her the award. My younger sister did the impossible. She even brought the family along. How dare she? Okay, she left her second fiddle seat in my self-pity symphony called You Are Not So Bad After All. She really just walked out, man. Then I'm left there in the cold, alone, playing now second fiddle to her great symphony called The Great Comeback. Somebody play some sad music, huh? Okay, nobody. Okay, but anyway, it all came to a head during a subsequent Chinese New Year gathering in 2018. Okay, we were all at my grand-uncle's house before COVID. Huh? My father was there as well. My elder sister was late, and my grand-uncle asked my father, where's Dr. Lam? In case you're wondering, my elder sister became a medical doctor. What else do you expect her to do, right? So my grand-uncle asked my father, where's Dr. Lam, right? Then after that, just small talk and say, oh, doctor very busy, right? Then my father replied nonchalantly, as any good Asian father, say, don't need to care about her lah. Doctor, got what use? My younger daughter, better. Bring me to Istana, 总统府 leh. Then show photo, right? Yeah, that photo that you saw already. Okay, so I'm there, by the way. They are talking, right? I'm at the table. I sit with them. I'm just sitting beside them. Then my uncle, probably trying to be kind, he looked at me and then asked about me. He said, your family, all very good, huh? You're very good, huh? Your son, pointing to me now, also good, right? Right. To that, I was like, getting ready to receive some words of affirmation, say something nice about me, man, Papa. But before I knew it, my father said dismissively, this one useless one. Then he paused, and the next blow came harder than the first. He said, okay lah, at least God give me one grandson. Then he pointed to my son, Chen Yi, 1 year old then, and he went to carry him over to join the conversation between two old men. Cold, hard reality. After playing second fiddle to my elder sister's life for decades, in my whole education life, my comfort previously found loosely in my younger sister was shattered. She go istana leh. And I realized that now, with that conversation in Chinese New Year, I'm going to have to play second fiddle to my son, in my father's eyes at least, likely for the rest of my life. So, that is my resume of more than 3 decades as a second fiddle, and I hope that qualifies me to talk to you about today's topic. And that is our topic today. I have given you an example of playing the second fiddle in my family life. But that cruel symphony plays out at work, where you know you're not the first in line for the next promotion. Maybe you're slogging at it at a presentation, and you know that your higher CEP colleague will be presenting, and he or she will be getting all the limelight. Or in school, where in CCAs or whatever, you'll always be that assistant monitor, assistant, chairman or whatever. Or at home, as a husband, after the children come along, your wife is never the same again. My wife is still good, just saying. You're irreversibly relegated to the second fiddle role for the next, 40 years. Or those of us who serve in church, in the background, the setup crew or the projectionist, or now the teleprompter controller, right? You'll be slogging your way, waking up early, But all the limelight, in fact, all that people see at all, online and in physical meeting, will be those musicians. Unless, if you want to have some limelight, make a mistake. And then you'll get a death stare. All look at you, and then you almost die 1,000 times. True story, I know, because I started serving in church in the setup crew, so I fully understand. And I thank all of you at the backstage, for all the work you're doing. And I hope this message on playing the second fiddle will encourage you today. The premise of this message today is really that many times in our life, we are tasked with doing something that requires significant effort and even sacrifice. But the reward and recognition seem uncertain or unfair. In these second fiddle moments, we may struggle to stay the course, or self-doubt about your own worth might kick in. Today, I'll read from the account of Joshua. He was Israel's second-generation leader after Moses had dramatically led them out of slavery from Egypt. I hope to share my thoughts about playing the second fiddle and how we can respond as Christians. As I asked in the message title, Doldrums, which, by the way, refers to a state of stagnation. Basically, Doldrums means that you feel stuck or not progressing. Doldrums or destiny, right? I would like to invite you at the end of this message to consider if playing second fiddle is something of the doldrums, that feeling of being stuck, or is it that glorious gate to your true destiny? Joshua 7, verse 1. After the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord said to Joshua, son of Nun, Moses' assistant, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now then, you and all these people, get ready to cross the river Jordan into the land I'm about to give to them, to the Israelites. I will give you every place where you set your foot, as I promised Moses. Your territory will extend from the desert to the Mediterranean Sea in the west. Verse 5. No one will be able to stand against you all the days of your life. As I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I'll never leave you nor forsake you. Be strong and courageous, because you will lead these people to inherit the land I swore to their ancestors to give them. Be strong and very courageous. Be careful to obey all the law my servant Moses gave you. Do not turn from it to the right or to the left, that you may be successful wherever you go. Very long, but coming back to this again, remember we're talking about second fiddle. Joshua is taking over from Moses. The context of this passage was that Moses had just died, and Joshua is taking over as a leader of this relatively young nation. I'm not sure about you, but reading this text, one thing that jumped out for me was how many times God referenced Moses when speaking to Joshua. Remember this, God talking to Joshua. From this text, I think there will be two questions that Joshua, as a new leader to the intergenerational second feeder to Moses, that he has to grapple with, Joshua has to grapple with. The first being recognition. And that brings me to my first point. You look at our bulletin these days, look at it, right, fill it in. Recognition. The question that we can ask ourselves, we will be faced with here is, should I do it? Just look at what God said to Joshua and the references to Moses. There's a table, right, I just prepared. So verse 2, Moses, my servant. Verse 3, I promised Moses. Verse 5, I was with Moses. Verse 7, my servant Moses. Moses, Moses, Moses. This is God talking to Joshua. Paraphrase in a BGR context. It's like your current girlfriend talking to you about her ex-boyfriend. Let's call the ex-boyfriend John. I have broken up with John, so now I'll date you. As I have promised John to love him, I'll love you the same. As I spend quality time with John without fail, I'll do the same with you. As you have heard from John about my preferences, obey them. Love you. Oh, that's just for fun, huh? No, don't. Okay. So anyway, would you stay in that relationship if you paraphrase that way? And if you're Joshua, would you take up that job? For Joshua, God's invitation to be the successor of Moses, an intergenerational second feeder role, was not particularly exciting. Think about it. After all, Moses has gotten all the cool parts, man. He got in front of Pharaoh, arguably the most powerful man in his day. Moses was the one who caught down the 10 plagues. He got the plot of parting the Red Sea and dramatically liberating the Israelites. You don't agree? But Hollywood, you might not agree, but Hollywood agrees that this was cool. That's why they made Prince of Egypt, right? And we are still waiting, for, some Joshua show. Like, go and research, you cannot find one. Maybe Joshua, successor to Moses movie. Maybe it will come out on Disney Plus these days, but I wouldn't hold my breath. Okay, but anyway, Joshua's recognition as Israel's leader is predictably less and lesser than Moses's. Maybe Joshua could have just asked to be one of the Israelites. After all, Joshua was not a nobody by then. He was one of the 12 spies. He has been serving Moses. He can continue as one of the leaders. Because the effort required to move from one of the leaders to that one leader multiplies exponentially. And from a cost-benefit angle, maybe it's just not worth it for Joshua. The pole position in Israel's history textbook has already been taken by Moses. Joshua's best shot, his best place in the history of Israel, is number 2. The question is that work all worth it? Maybe he should just ask his friend Caleb to take over. We know that he's eager. I think we all consciously or subconsciously do this calculation whenever we are presented with an opportunity to step up. At work, we'll weigh the exposure we can get. Do you get to present this presentation you're doing to the senior management? Is this project that hot topic, that project that people care about in the organization? Who gets the credit in the event of success? And do I get to lead with real autonomy? Or am I just a figurehead? Etc., etc. Then we decide whether to put our hand up for the job or not, right? And in church, I'm sure it's not so self-serving, but invariably, okay, maybe not you, me, okay? I do wonder sometimes, the parts that we are tasked with, is it a key part of the job? Or is it just an administrative, mundane role that the people doing the real, fun, exciting stuff want to outsource to us? Will any recognition come around to me? For you today, you may have been asked to step up to something, maybe at work, and you know that the choicest recognition and reward for that project has already been taken by the person before you, whom you will always play second feeder to. And the work is still burdensome. You're weighing the efforts, rewards, payout to see whether to take it up or not. This happens in church too. Maybe you're asked to step up to a new role, a lot more responsibility, a lot more work, more time away from your day job and your young family. And on the reward scale, you may think, well, I'm already in church, maybe I'm already serving already, right? Not say I backslide, Why make my life harder when the marginal utility, the additional benefit of recognition and reward is minimal? Or maybe it is your spouse being asked to step up. He or she gets that recognition and you feel like that second feeder on the sideline, not recognized for the sacrifice that you put in for the family so that your spouse can serve hard. And you want to ask him or her to reject the additional role. Don't. Anyway, of course, we know what Joshua did here. right? He took on that task despite the uncertainty of recognition. Also, we know that he got some parts of that recognition. Today, we see distinct roles that God has given to Moses and Joshua. Moses' role was to bring the Israelites out of Egypt and give them the law. Joshua's role, on the other hand, was to enter and conquer the promised land and become the archetype of God's power that comes through obedience. Joshua was an extension of God's story that Moses also happened to have a part to play. Joshua was not a subset of Moses, but a unique character in God's great story of redemption. His willingness to step forward despite the uncertainty was honored by God's powerful demonstration of favor and providence to conquer the land. In short, Joshua's obedience paid off. If you were Joshua, should you do it? My answer to you is yes, because it's worth it. And you can write it down on your paper if you're still using one. Why? Okay, anyway. Here's another perspective from Ezra 3, verse 11. With praise and thanksgiving, they sang to the Lord. He is good. His love towards Israel endures forever. And all the people gave a great shout of praise to the Lord, because the foundation of the house of the Lord was laid. But many of the older priests and the Levites and the family heads who had seen the former temple wept aloud when they saw the foundation of this temple being laid, while many others shouted for joy. Here, context, the Israelites returned from exile and decided to rebuild the temple. The previous temple was built by the richest and wisest man, King Solomon, and it was no doubt a shiny, glorious, splendorous temple. That first temple was destroyed by the Babylonians in 586 BC, and the conquered Israelites were carried away as exile. Now, in these Ezra times, they are back in their homeland. And after laying the foundation to try to rebuild this second temple, the young man cheered, "Hooray, we built something here," while the old man wept aloud. What's going on? This was because that the old man had seen the original glorious temple and looked at their second feeder wannabe temple now and concluded that it would never rise to the glory of the first. They wept aloud in second feeder sadness. However, we know that it was on this foundation, the second temple, that the incarnate Christ, God himself, walked with his human feet. The builders of the second temple did what the original could never rival. They participated in a work where the maker of the universe personally touched in flesh. I hope you get this point. The point here is that if God calls us to do something, sometimes we get to see the tangible rewards and recognition fast, in the season. Sometimes it takes longer, but the point is, it will always be worth it. The second point, the second thing that Joshua likely grappled with is resources. The question of, can I do it? And that's my point, second point today. Resources, can I do it? Up to this point, Joshua always had Moses. He was likely overwhelmed and clearly afraid to take over. God said many times, do not be afraid, be courageous, etc. The fair conclusion, I think, is that Joshua, he was afraid. And God, being all-knowing, knows this, that he's afraid, and is trying to encourage him. In fact, in later verses 17 to 18, it's apparent that even the people, the Israelites that Joshua is leading now, knew that he was afraid, and they were trying to encourage him, imploring him to not be afraid, as they said in verse 17 to 18. Just as we fully obeyed Moses, we will obey you. Whoever rebels against your word and does not obey it, whatever you may command them will be put to death. Only be strong and courageous. I can almost hear the people begging Joshua, we'll do whatever you say lah. We'll even get rid of the people who don't support you, man. Please, 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 Joshua, stop being afraid. You know, it's like just this morning, my son, he knows that I'm going to speak today, right? So he wrote me a piece of paper and he tell me, please talk to them about this. He must know that I'm afraid. He tell me to talk to you all about the fruit of the Spirit. Just in case it's prophetic, you know, fruit of the Spirit, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control, okay? It's not in the script, but yeah, just in case, you know, reflect upon it. So anyway, my son then offered to pray for me. He knows that I'm afraid. Maybe he's right. I think he's right. I don't know. But well, we all grapple with this as well when we're asked to do something more, to step up, right? Maybe to speak on a Sunday morning. The modern twist is this reference to imposter syndrome. Some quotes from some famous people. Emma Watson, Harry Potter's Hermione, right? Famous actress. And Michelle Obama, right? Former First Lady. Or our local politicians. Apparently, success alone do not take away that sense of feeling like an imposter. We know that if we step up, we will get that nagging fear of messing it all up and being found out to have tried too hard. As such, many times we wonder if we should just not take on the risk. Coming back to the notion of second fiddle, the title, right? The task of the second violinist is actually not easy at all. One has to keep time, play awkward repetitive parts, don't know how to do, and execute other difficult musical maneuvers that I shall not pretend that I understand at all. So, see the expert opinion from this Canadian orchestra practitioner. Okay? She says that all violinists in an orchestra has very high skill level, regardless of first violinist or second violinist. If truth be known, a lot of what is required of the second violins is difficult, even at times treacherous. They often have to play rapid, intricate rhythms on the lower strings, which is difficult and tiring, and harmonies sometimes create awkward passages. They also have to play syncopated and other very difficult rhythms underneath the soaring melodies of the first violins. Blah, blah, blah. Okay. I'm not an orchestra expert. But basically the point is that it's difficult to be a second violinist. It's not an easy task. And while the second violinists have to focus on doing this task that's already difficult well, he or she also have to grapple with the extra fear of falling short of even this task. So why try? Maybe you have this mix of imposter syndrome and fear of falling short of the big shoes you see you're feeling. You could be a juncture in your career where the next gig will stretch you, so that you wonder if you should try and risk failure and, of course, embarrassment. At the same time, you feel it in your heart that God is nudging you to do more as you extend your influence in the marketplace. Or you're asked to lead a fledgling church project. You look at the Jordan rivers you have to cross, and the Lebanons and deserts you're tasked to conquer as part of this project. And you wonder if you can do it at all. How should we reckon with this? I read a text on one of Joshua's conquests. Joshua chapter 10, verse 12. On the day the Lord gave the Amorites over to Israel, Joshua said to the Lord in the presence of Israel, "Sun, stand still over Gibeon, and you, moon, over the valley of Ajalon." So the sun stood still, and the moon stopped, till the nation Israel avenged itself on its enemies. Verse 14. There's never been a day like this before or since, a day when the Lord listened to a human being. Surely the Lord was fighting for Israel. Humbly I submit to you that the answer to the question of can I do it is yes, because God qualifies the call. Joshua got the victory not because he was mighty or capable. He got the victory because God fought for him. God listened to a mere man because God called a mere man to an important task. In Joshua 5, before the famous Battle of Jericho, Joshua saw a man with a drawn sword, and Joshua asked if this man was for him or against him. The man identified himself as the commander of the Lord's army, who has now come. The rest is familiar. Joshua had a resounding success in the campaign against Jericho as the walls came down miraculously. Bible scholars today generally agree that this man with the drawn sword was Christ himself. Think about it. Joshua was fearful. He was afraid. Christ came and fought for him. Are you fearful and feeling inadequate? The commander of the Lord's army has now come to fight for you. Joshua conquered the promised land with a generation of refugees. And God gave him the victory because God had called him to the task. Can you do this task at hand that God has called you to? I hope you see that the answer is yes, because God qualifies the call. Second fiddles included. And here, we come to my last point. Rest. That Christ has done it. We struggle with the need for recognition and the fear of failing because we are fallen beings. Often we look at the Bible and try to find some heroes to guide our behaviors, and hopefully we can overcome our weakness and attain that glorious victory we seek. The reality is that there are no heroes in the Bible apart from Christ. Was King David a hero? He's an adulterer and a murderer. Peter was a coward. Paul persecuted the church. Abraham, he was prepared to let his wife be violated to save his own skin. So on and so forth. The main character of history isn't any of these mere men. The main character will also not be you, nor me as well. So don't be so stressed. The symphony is not about you or me. It's not even about those few elites who appear to be the first violinists or the soloists in the performance. We are all unworthy. No one is worthy to open the scroll. Revelation 5. As we read the text just now, focusing on Joshua and Moses, hoping to find a hero to emulate, let's read it again with the right emphasis. Joshua chapter 1, verse 1. After the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord said to Joshua, son of Nun, Moses' assistant, Moses, my servant is dead. Now then you and all these people get ready to cross the river Jordan into the land I am about to give to them, to the Israelites. I will give you every place you set your foot, as I promised Moses. Your territory will extend from the desert to the Mediterranean Sea in the west. No one will be able to stand against you all the days of your life. As I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will never leave you nor forsake you. Be strong and courageous, because you will lead these people to inherit the land I swore to their ancestors to give them. Be strong and very courageous. Be careful to obey all the law my servant Moses gave you. Do not turn from it to the right or to the left, that you may be successful wherever you go. Who you got the emphasis? It is about God, the great I am. As created beings, we have no glory of our own. Even the most dazzling glory you have witnessed in the best performances, athletics achievements, wonders of nature, or even in beautiful orchestras, they are but a borrowed one, a fragment of having been created in God's image. That subdued glory is a reflected one from the only source of glory, God, the creator of the universe himself. The reason why we have these struggles of recognition and resources is that we are hoping to find that glory of our own. The analogy I have for you is that we were all like a stained mirror, filled with grime and dirt, unable to shine. With Christ dying on the cross for each of us, you have been wiped clean, with the ability to now reflect light. Nevertheless, you're still not a light source. But as a fallen being, just as Eve ate the fruit in her efforts to have her eyes open, that she may be like God, knowing good and from evil, Genesis chapter 3, verse 5. We do not want to be a mirror, but we seek to, at least in our own calculation, be a tungsten filament light bulb. At least having a light or glory of our own, however small, and in today's context, environmentally unfriendly. Or the more ambitious amongst us wants to be that multi-color, state-of-the-art LED light, or that powerful stadium floodlight to light up your favorite football club. Whatever it is, we reject our place as reflector of God's glory, and we want to seek our own. My question is, why settle for so little? Back to the mirror analogy, I introduced to you gamma ray bursts. That's on the screen now. Gamma ray bursts are the most powerful explosions known in the universe and typically releases more energy in just a few seconds than our sun in its entire lifetime. Let me repeat that. More energy in just a few seconds than our sun in its entire lifetime. They, the gamma ray bursts, can shine through almost the entire visible universe. Why are you settling to be a floodlight or a multicolored LED light if you can reflect God's glorious gamma ray bursts and more? My goal here is not to put you down or to make you feel depressed that you have no glory of your own. But I share this with you today and to myself in a hope to give us rest. Instead of wasting our lives trying to conjure up that elusive glory of our own, we'll be better off, and so will the church and the world, if we humbly acknowledge that our job is not to create light, but to reflect it from God, the source of all light and the essence of light itself. In conclusion, we are all second fiddles with the great honor of a supporting role in God's divine orchestra. As God did in Joshua's generation, I believe that God reached out to a few good men and women in the generation after Joshua and every generation since. we can infer from the cyclical failure in the period after Joshua's death that likely some of these good men and women were crippled by the very points that we highlighted: recognition, resources, or whatever it may be, right? The point is that no one responded after Joshua to lead and unite the nation like Joshua did. And the results were tragic. We will be regularly faced with this choice of playing second fiddle to somebody, be it in church, at work, or at home. I urge you to consider to do that task joyfully and industriously, working for the Lord, knowing that it will be worth it, that God will equip you for it, and that God will allow you to grasp that it was a privilege to have been in God's orchestra, whatever your instrument. Our dignity and worth have been found in Christ, and we do not need to do sexy stuff to prop ourselves up. Even if your role in the orchestra is playing the humble triangle, ding, in God's symphony, it is worth, I submit, your whole life practicing and perfecting it. So, fellow second fiddlers, find your heavenly seats in God's orchestra and play your heart out to serenade all of creation. It may seem like the doldrums to some, but we know it's our glorious destiny.